Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
So we know Abhijit Banerjee as a Nobel Prize winning economist, but his latest book, Cooking to Save Your Life, is a help book or a guidebook that describes the intricacies associated with cooking, including emotions. We also have with us Cheyenne Olivier, who has illustrated the book, adding to the experience of reading the book. Welcome to the Print Page Turner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So my first question is to Abhijit. So who is this cookbook essentially for, if you could tell us in one line?
I think, to be honest, a little bit most of us. I think most of us, meaning most, for in India, most sort of comfortably off people. It's not a book for anybody who's really trying to save money. And I apologize. It's an expensive book. I apologize for that. It's a book for, but I think it's all of us have this moment some small minority are superb cooks and they need no props. But most of us are in a place where there's going to be, somebody's coming for dinner. I have 1 hour and have one other phone call going on at the same time. It's for those people who have to somehow plan a meal. And I think what the book tries to do is give you a sense of what recipe to pick for that. And it tends to get rid of a lot of the kind of finer details to get to you something that will generate, impact on eating. The goal is to have something very nice, not necessarily perfect, but done quickly under very real constraints.
Right. Cheyenne, would you please share with us, how did you go about illustrating the book? And, what was the process? What was the experience? And this is your first book that you've illustrated?
Yes, it's the first one. And
it's the first published book. You've illustrated
the first published. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I think before even doing the illustrations, I started to cook with Abhijit and to eat, of course, what Abhijit was cooking. And I think I will go back to the question you just asked, for whom this book is intended. It's intended to people like me who are too impressed by cookbooks to even try to invite people. So I think what I learned while cooking with Abhijit was to actually be a little bit less scared about just inviting people and then cooking them a good dinner. And then for the illustrations, I really thought about the illustrations as graphic ingredients. I took squares, circles, triangles, and I started to mince them, chop them, mix them to recompose illustrations that I think of as dishes. You have the chapter scenes that are more like main dishes where you have a lot of elements. It's quite elaborately seasoned. Then you have all the illustrations that show all the hands, the eyes. Somehow those are side dishes that are here and there between the recipes in the book. And then you have all the abstract appetizers that are next to each recipe. That somehow, with those illustrations, I wanted to bring out a little bit of the magic that you have when you first look at a dish and you're trying to figure out what is it made of, or can I recognize that spice? So you have this little play between the illustrations and the title of the recipe or the list of ingredients. So it was mostly a way to cook with graphic elements.
Okay, that's very interesting. So Abhijit, the Nobel Prize winning economist and a chef, how do the two identities sort of come together in the book, and if they do? So,
well, I'm not a chef. I think chefs are people who cook professionally, who cook. If you tell me to cook for 50 people, I'm a very confident cook usually. If you tell me to cook for 12 people, I won't blink an eyelid. But if 50 people, that's a whole other ballgame. You run a sort of a line line cooking where you organize everything, one thing after the other, whatever, chicken for, chicken for Tina, chickpeas for Cheyenne, that sort of structure, keep doing it. That's a very different mindset. So I should say that this is not, I'm not a chef. I wouldn't want to be a chef. I would be scared shitless if I were actually forced to be a chef. I think there would be a whole other life. Cheyenne's sister is a chef, a real chef at the Ritz. It was at the Ritz in Paris. It's like and that's a whole other experience. The discipline, the effort, the focus, those are different. I cook without infinite focus. I'm also paying attention to my son who's telling me about Pokemons or whatever. It's cooking with 3/4 of your mind. So that's, I think, for number one. And then how did it come about? I think that mostly just, I think I like many people, I like to eat, and I've been cooking since I was 15, so a few years. So I kind of had many recipes. In fact, I think even the stuff that we normally cook is much broader than what's in the book. So we have many recipes which we cook once or twice a month or something. So there was always that substrate. And then I thought my brother-in-law, Esther's brother, wanted me to write down some recipes for him. So I wrote some recipes and gave him a Christmas present. And then I realized it was boring to write recipes. So I wanted to sort of write something which was more pleasant to write, to tell stories, a bit to wrap around the recipes, something. So that started to add the kind of, in that, right from the beginning, it was a little bit this compulsion to write stories around the recipes was there. And then I think it's only in retrospect, then at some point I asked Chiki Sarkar, who's our publisher, whether it would be worth publishing. And she took a look. I said, sure, why not? And then the pressure was on. Then we actually had to, it wasn't, you couldn't do anything lazily. Everything was done then. And Cheyenne is a very good person to work with for me, because she's very attentive to no slippage is missed by her. She will say, on page 233, you said this, but that should be that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, somehow the Abhijit as an economist dimension came when we really started to think about the book as something that could be published. And then he wrote the chapter introductions where he actually puts himself more as an economist, thinking about food, and not only thinking about food as somehow whole ingredient, but as food as part of our social lives.
Right. So Cheyenne, you described how the process of illustrating the book came about, right? And you said how, Abhijit cooked and, you tasted that food. So have you tried? So I want to know if you have tried any recipe from his book for yourself. And if you did, which one was that?
Oh, so one of my job was actually before doing the book to try every recipe to find out if the measures are right, if the order, basically if all those recipes can be done by a lambda cook. Mm-hmm. So my first job was to do that, and then because cooking with Abhijit gave me the confidence to actually invite people, my friends, boyfriends, family, everyone. So I actually organized many dinners, including cooking home Indian food for 15 people in Finland. Oh, and they liked it very much. So I think my favorite one is the stir-fried cabbage. It's very simple, but it's incredibly delicious.
Okay. So, Abhijit, in your, let's say every chapter before every recipe, so there are this kind of like what I felt was like Postit notes, where, you're talking about, who is cooking or who should be cooking a particular dish, or, sort of like these notes. So what was the idea behind that? It feels like this very partner in crime kind of vibe where, there's this person telling you how to go about it. So
it was, as I said, when I started writing the recipes, I realized I was bored out of my mind. So I decided I needed to have a little game to play for myself, which is to imagine when that recipe might be useful. And sometimes it was actually from real experience, and sometimes sometimes it was just things I could imagine, or where I collapse stories that happened to me with things that happened to other people, things I've observed, stories I've heard from friends. So just take them and turn them into a little bit of a flavoring for the dish. What kind of dish is it? Where would you, deploy it? It's I think cooking is often I think we have, for most forms of, I think, art, we have this kind of this pretense that these are, pure acts of emotive or whatever, intellectual and emotive creativity. But nothing is. Everything is also a response to your social circumstances. Maybe Cheyenne will disagree with me, but I think everything is a response to your social circumstances. And so, you can be creative, but you're also thinking, what am I trying to achieve with this? Who am I trying to impress? What is it that I'm, what would be the ideal outcome of this meal? And sometimes it's very mundane, sometimes it's very, important for your life. But whatever it is, it's worth understanding what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to feed yourself? Some recipes are great for yourself, and others are great for others. And what kind of others? And I think those are all thoughts we think. But I think we are a little bit embarrassed to acknowledge that. And maybe what this book tries to do is to just be a little bit more blunt about the way we actually conceive of all these things, because we're people and we have ambitions and desires and sort of complex relationships with people and things like that.
So there's a chapter in your book that says, in particular, there's no shame in starting again, especially if you suspect that something went badly wrong right at the beginning of a new step. So do you think in life and in cooking, this is not really seen as, people are actually reluctant to start over because, they often feel like, okay, I've lost time, I'm lagging behind, or am I failing at, when I restart, did I actually fail at that? So,
So that's related to, I think, what Cheyenne said before, which is to locate it in the, I think this is true of everything. I hate rewriting a paper. Forget about cooking. I hate it. It's like pulling teeth. I have to wait a year before I start doing it. Even if by that time it's very clear to me that it needs to be sort of go at it from scratch. And I do it. I actually don't like bandaging things. So I'm somebody who eventually does it. But it takes me a while to think, can I just somehow close my eyes and ignore it? And so I think that's a very real, I think maybe you are unique and you've never done it. And, but I think for most of us, that desire to hold on is a very real one. And I think that then at some point you give up.
I think it's also that people somehow, maybe I see it from the creative point of view, but people in cooking as well get caught between following every step of the recipe, but then that's a bit boring, and that's a bit too mechanical. And on the other hand, trying to be extremely original and creative and trying to do everything your own way. And what we try to show also with the book is that there is a place in between where you can actually follow it, but still move this parameter to adjust it to your own constraint. And maybe that's also how you can start without overthinking what your achievements could be.
Right. So, Cheyenne, what struck me was that when you sort of visualized the essence, and what you also shared here, right? The essence of every dish in very geometric colors and patterns. And, right now in the world of social media, apps like Instagram, so presentation has become like such an important element, right? Like how you sort of decorate and everything. So does abstraction work in food then?
Yeah, so using the illustration was also a reaction to the overwhelming presence of photographs in picture book, in picture. Sorry, that's in cookbooks, where somehow you focus way too much on what it should look like, and therefore you have no real play in it, because in any case it's the ideal ingredient that you have a professional cooked it. It's often the photograph is also photoshopped. So somehow taking on the first step the illustrations that already put you in another space, a space that you cannot in any case try to reproduce, and then using abstraction, it's setting the dish in a place that's completely unreachable, and therefore not intimidating. In any case, there is no way you're going to reproduce that. So you can actually work with what you have in front of you, and that's maybe the point of also showing a lot of the hands, the smell, the eyes, looking at the color of the onions. It's also that nowhere in the recipe you're going to be told that it's going to smell bad at this point or smell good at this point, or the color will be exactly like that. So you have to also follow the recipe, but trust what you have in front of you and your own senses.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a sense, by I think one of the things that the abstraction does, at least for me, is it says that it invites you to create your own beauty.
Right.
I think that's in a sense you are, and that for me is a challenge, but nonetheless it's inviting you to sort of think of it aesthetically in the abstract. Think of a dish is, after all, in the end, a set of visually it's a set of colors, it's a set of smells. Think of what you can do creatively. And I think that it's in a sense it's an example of that, this is one way of being creative. Take this dish and I turn it into this medallion, basically, of colors.
It's also just to me, it's really the visual pleasure that you can have with food. It's really not only about just cooking amounts of calories. It's smells, it's colors that are turning. I'm always when I'm cooking, I'm always amazed at all the textures that I can see. So the pleasure also in cooking it's not only focused on what you are eating, but everything that comes around, including all the stories that are being told while cooking, and that we did extensively with Abhijit, but also at dinner, but also when you actually bring the food to the table, you start talking about it, and then you start also engaging with other people. So that's also how the abstraction can bring you out of just you in front of the food, and that's a bit intimidating.
So just maybe you don't know this. Cheyenne was our au pair, and so she lived with us for 3 years. So there was she had a extensive exposure to our cooking. We cook every day. I mean, with essentially no exceptions. So
yeah, I can confirm.
Okay. So Abhijit, it's often said actually that when men cook, it's art, and when women do, it's more like a duty. Women are in the kitchen and doing it. So when and how did these stereotypes creep in? Do you think anything is changing at all now?
I think it's changing. I think it's how deep the change is and how long it'll take. I mean, it's we had a cook at home when I was growing up, and he was a man, and it was not uncommon at all to have in Calcutta at that time to have a cook who wasn't a man. So I don't think it's the case, and he was not doing art. He was getting us like, dal and rice and, gonto or whatever. It was very much the other end of that. But he was a man. So I do think that, and that is true in my mother's house as well. The cook was a extremely crotchety man who I was scared of, who really would like yell the hell out of you whenever you went anywhere near the kitchen. And I was always greedy, so I would like be sneaking around the kitchen, smelling the smells, trying to see if I could taste something ahead of time. And that was not what he wanted. But in any case, there were men involved, and I think that in that sense, I think that it's more the I think the stereotype in particular comes from not the sort of the working class, but from, men who can afford to not cook, who have their spouse who they can designate. I mean, if you look at like who's making tikkis on the streets of Delhi and selling them, they're men. Mm-hmm. And they're not doing it for art. They're doing it for money. And they're trying to be as functional. So I don't think there is a particular stereotype that men should not cook among Now, it's true that at home, the tikkiwala's home, probably his wife still cooks, but that's partly a structure of the labor market also. That that he's probably out long hours, etc. So I want to not. I think there are many egregious forms of sexism in India. I'm not sure that this is necessarily the most stelling example. Whereas among the middle classes, when I was growing up, as we say a little bit about this in the book, in the meat chapter of the introduction, there is this where men cooking was a real, X will cook. Oof. His wife cooks every day, and his sister cooks every day, and his mother cooks every day. But Mr. X will cook, and that was like such a, you'd hear it with such respect and resonance. And then I think that particular phenomenon is a bit changing in that class. The class of the comfortably off people, I think there are more men who now cook, partly because their wives might work outside, the wives might have other, that was very unusual when I was growing up, and partly also because they've seen a lot of MasterChef.
Yeah, definitely. So, when you're talking about, like, I'm sort of coming back to the Post-it note sort of thing, because, you're talking about various moods and pressures that drive us to cook, right? You've mentioned even, love, envy, sometimes even pride when you're about to cook a dish. So what are the lessons you would say? And again, this is for both of you. What do you think are the lessons that one learns from cooking beyond it being just a life skill?
Let Cheyenne start.
I'm still thinking, so you can...
Okay, I'll start. I guess for me, I would say it's one domain in which I feel that, and then it's not the only one. I also don't mind doing dishes. I think there are things where I think just doing something different from what you do professionally is extraordinarily useful. It's and not watching TV. I come home, I don't sit down. I start cooking. Why? Not because I'm so driven or anything. It's a way of actually much better unwinding than watching. For me, it would be punishment to watch TV. Personally, forgive me for saying this, but I really can't. I have no desire for passive entertainment almost. So. Cooking is so, but I think it really refreshes me. After I've cooked, I go back to work often, most days actually. After I've cooked and the children gone to bed, I will work for 2-3 hours often, late into the night. but then I'm refreshed. I'm no longer have the debris from the whole day in my mind. It's gone with the cooking. The cooking was a separate joy and a separate activity. Your hands are moving, your nose is smelling, your eyes are looking. It's very different from, doing math on a piece of paper or typing or something like that. So I think that's one life lesson, which is that I think do something with a lot of attention, with a lot of, passion, that's different from what you do. And that could be pottery, it could be whatever, a painting, it could be climbing. I have no views on what that might be, but it needs to be something that's very different from what you do. I think going from working to being fully passive is, I think, not a very productive move. That's sort of my instinct on that. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but that's very much how I think about life.
Yeah, to me, I think it's something about being generous also. It's somehow when you come in someone's house or you meet someone, the first thing you'll do or you'll get is so someone is going to offer you some food, or you're going to propose some food or something. So to me, it's also about just going a little bit further than just precisely you need to save your life. It's just going a little bit more. It would be that. I think it's now it strikes me more, because before I never received people, or I never even invited people for lunch or dinner, or even go to lunch or dinner. It was I was very restrained in that sense, and I think right now I really consider food as just a way to meet people. It's just it's like a pretext to actually be together and be doing something together, and I think that's very that's how I see it now.
Okay, and this is the final question for both of you again. So if you could just eat one more plate of food, what would that be?
Sorry, one what?
One more plate of food. Like if you could just have one more plate of food, what would that be?
Now that we just came back from India, now I know exactly. It would be a dosa.
Oh, nice.
Dosa is my absolute favorite food in the world.
Wonderful.
I think for me, it would be a plate of, maybe a roti, bhakri, rice, something with a nice dal and some 3 types of pickle. I love pickles, so that's what I would eat. I think clearly that's my comfort food, is something rice, some starch with dal, a nice, really rich dal, and lots of pickle.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of you, for doing this. And it's been such a wonderful conversation with the both of you.